I think it looks like OG week here on the Sunday show, in the sense that we are old and grumpy. Get off our lawns. We're tired of your Jesus-y stuff. We're tired of your Satan-y stuff. We're tired of your pagan-y stuff. We are tired of your right-leaning stuff. Let me tell you something, Seth. Back in our day,
Oh yeah. I'd feel
I
it.
used to
Last
walk.
night there was a house behind us on the street next to us, and they were having some kind of an outdoor party. And I was sitting inside, and my first thought wasn't, "Wow, they're having a great time. Good on them." I was like, "God, you're rattling my windows. I'm trying to get some peace and quiet in here." And I caught myself, and I thought, "Oh my God, that's my parents." And so I can feel it creeping up on me. But it's good to be back.
Our neighbors, two doors down from us, there is a loud party every single weekend, and sometimes both Friday and Saturday. And it's I say party, it's a festival most weekends. And so it's a Mexican family that's two doors down and some of their extended family. And so there's barbecue and tamales and, mariachi bands, and just they've had blow up stuff for the kids and everything else. And I'm like, the world is burning down, but at least these people have found a way to have a good time. Their kids aren't going to know how bad things were when they were growing up.
Yeah. I do find myself, like, people ask, "What are your hobbies?" And I'm like, well, in the top 3 right now is just existential dread. Is really it's in the top 3, I think. And I'm, in my inner circle surrounded by, I think, 2 groups of people who live in totally different realities. And I don't know. I found myself trying to it's weird. I want to be engaged and be informed, and I don't want to go crazy and lose my mind and be depressed all the time. So I oscillate back and forth, and I don't have a very good balance so far. So.
It's kind of weird because you and I come from much more, certainly more on the fundamentalist evangelical side of Christianity that we found our way out of, though not identical. And I can remember what I used to think about how the world should work. I'm not going to get it exactly right. I can't just put on my Jesus hat and remember exactly how I felt. But I think what confuses me the most is that I see my right-leaning or extreme right-wing fundamentalist, fundagelical, whatever, and they're applauding the current political regime. And even when I was a Christian, I don't think I would have been applauding this. I think I would have been appalled, and this would have been kind of like every bit of language would have been about how this is a necessary evil, that it's just a slight improvement over the madness that the left wants to impose. When you look at this, are you as confused by, the people that we used to associate with regularly, and how not bothered they are by some of the things that are going on?
Well, it's interesting and it's complex. It's almost like Trump has been the black light at the crime scene. It has revealed things that were likely always there that I just hadn't seen clearly. Whether it's the ignorance, we knew the disinformation conduits were there. Hell, I wrote a book about it. But this I think what surprised me the most, and I'm speaking about this at an event coming up. We'll talk about in just a second. I'm speaking in Orlando about how there is often in human beings this tendency to respond to authoritarianism, an authority. And what I have noticed in my circle is there is a group of people who 5 minutes ago were banging the drum of democracy and freedom, the free people, we the people. But they believe the system is so screwed up that at this moment, in a state of what they consider to be emergency, they will now hand everything over. Their rights, their passwords, their social security number, their bank accounts, their freedoms. They'll give it all over to a strongman, authoritarian savior figure who says, "Trust me, I'm going to go in. I'm going to take a baseball bat to the whole place, and then I'm going to rebuild something beautiful in our image. Just allow me to subvert all accountability laws, checks, and balances, and I will bring you nirvana." And there's a whole culture of people that look up adoringly and believe it. And I'm like, in what part of any history has a totalitarian been given absolute autonomy and then surrendered his power after he got powerful? It just does not happen. That's, I think, the thing that drives me crazy. This weird,
Yeah.
naive savior, authoritarian hero worship. He has come to save us all. And I think religion, in some ways, primed this culture to do that, because I think Christianity at its core is really an authoritarian model, right? The male father figure and male father figures in the home, male pastors, kind of shepherds and sheep. I don't know. I don't know if that's an overreach or not.
No, and it's wild sorting it out. By the way, welcome to the Sunday show. We're going to be taking calls, and especially we prefer getting calls from theists, from people who believe that there's a God, who have views that disagree with us on any number of things. If you're a theist and you don't feel like defending why you think your version of God is real, normally there wouldn't be much point in calling. But if you're not willing to defend that, but you are willing to say that the current state of affairs, the current political climate is what you think your God would prefer, that I'd like to know about, because I'm confused by how many people think this is the world they wanted, or this is moving in the direction of the world they want. Because for years I've been in a position saying everybody wants a better world. They just may disagree on what a better world looks like or how best to get there. And we're now at the point where I'm not as convinced that everybody even wants a better world. I think that on some level they do, but I want to get to the difference of when I see a better world, it's more or less restrictive. It is, um, you know, more freedom, more leaving people alone, more, I don't understand why we are flipping the world upside down by turning less than 1% of the population into a boogeyman to dangle in front of people while they rob you blind. Like,
Yeah, and it's also interesting that the demographic that says no weapon formed against me shall prosper, right? The devil is
yeah,
already lost. Victory is won. It's amazing how constantly, perpetually terrified these people are. I mean, every they're terrified of everything. When our kids are going to go to school and the teacher's going to switch their gender, and there's a mob of border rapists that are coming, and those evil socialist lefties are flying Jewish satellites over us and starting wildfires in California, and the COVID vaccine is, it's a way to strip us of our freedoms. It's just bizarre. I was in an engagement recently with somebody, devout MAGA Christian, and he was online chest thumping about the Sound of Freedom film and how child sex trafficking is happening. It's under our noses, and everyone needs to see this critical film. Well, it's loaded, right? Because it's not that child sex trafficking doesn't happen or that it's not horrible, because it is. But Sound of Freedom is fiction. It is a mythologizing of a character, Tim Ballard, who is up to his eyeballs in accusations of impropriety, self-myth making, sexual misconduct, etc., that he's lied about so much of what he has done. And the plot of Sound of Freedom has, it's stranger danger essentially as kids are trafficked over borders to take them to the evil land out there where the kids are trafficked. But the vast majority of child sex trafficking operations actually have to do with someone who is in the family or someone in the social circle of the child. It's not somebody in a black van taking them over the border. The Sound of Freedom was actually a fictitious story, but these people, all they had to do was see Jim Caviezel and to hear the invocation of God, and they immediately accepted wholesale this sort of narrative about stranger danger, the evil other immigrants that doesn't hurt, right? And they went all in. And so when I went in and I said, well, actually, here are the facts. He didn't want to hear the facts. He wasn't interested. And he got angry at me for correcting the record. I don't know if it was because he felt embarrassed or just because he was so in love with this sort of hero narrative of the good Christian rescuing babies. It was always an interesting conversation, but he was like this, la, 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 la. And I don't know what to do with that, man. I have no clue.
Yeah, it's wild. As always, if you're a theist and you want to defend, hey, here's a good reason to believe in God, cool. If you want to say, yes, I think that the country is currently moving in the direction that my God would prefer it, that's fine. There's lots of potential questions. One of them, we've got Michael calling in from Poland. Michael, pronouns he, him, is asking, why would any nation think God is on their side? Michael, why wouldn't they?
Well, is my sound okay?
You're good. Keep going.
So I don't know if you heard that. I guess no. But actually, I'm calling from Poland, and about 10 years ago, the bishops of the Catholic Church in Poland declared Jesus Christ to be the King of Poland. How about that? You're light years behind in America.
Okay.
And then my question would be, what actually causes people to think that the ultimate creator of the universe wants their guys to win?
Well, I wasn't really joking when I asked why wouldn't they? If God is defined as the side that is righteous, then if you want to be righteous, you are either on the side with God or you're not. And so, of course, people think they're right. People don't run around going, "Ooh, I'm so wrong," or "Ooh, I'm so evil." That just doesn't happen.
So, can we say that, in fact, people would think that God is in fact them? So, therefore, God is with them? Does it make any sense?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Because there was this German philosopher, and I know you're not a fan of most of them, but the basic idea of Feuerbach was that what we call God is just like the perfect image of myself. So when a certain nation believes in God, they actually think that God is, just like the German soldiers who had God with us on their belts. So if God is representative of this nation, then that means God is with them. Is it an
That's what
okay
I was saying.
explanation?
Yes. That's what I was saying. Yes.
So it makes sense, this point of view on the issue.
If I may, Michael, I'll
Yeah.
jump in real fast. I don't think there's any one reason anybody does anything. It's a planet of 8 billion people. But I do think we see invocations of God by history's kings. It's awfully convenient. Now, maybe some were deluded into believing that they were actually of divine right. You know, God had appointed them to be the sovereign, to rule absolutely. That's awfully convenient. We also, and we've seen this in the United States with the rise of Christian nationalism, the promotion of it, even by people who are not necessarily Christians, but they understand how to rally the most reliable base in the evangelical right. So they've weaponized the name of God. Donald Trump standing out in front of the church he doesn't attend, waving the Bible he does not read. Well, that's signaling. He is essentially saying, it's not my idea, it is God's. And those primed to respond to savior figures and authority, certainly spiritual authority, well, then, or they're supposed to line up in lockstep, salute, and obey. I do think in many people, this idea of God is on my side serves the feeling of divine destiny. It feeds a superiority complex. It gives you an excuse to perhaps lock out people of conflicting or disagreeing points of view. So instead of actually listening to the critic of your faith, you can just say, no, 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 no. God said don't listen. I'm right because God is on my side. I mean, this is a massively complex issue, I think. But there are true believers, and I think there are those who understand the power, the weaponizing power of invocations of divine authority as they try to assert their own.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was or what the comment was, but yes, there are lots of reasons for people to think that God's on their side, both sincerely and insincerely.
Well, it just makes my head spin because in Poland, this religious right wing has the saying, "Death to the enemies of the fatherland," and they openly shout it inside the Catholic churches. So it's mind-boggling. My mind can't process that. How is it
But
possible for?
if you will, if I can interject quickly, even the phrase, right, about the fatherland is invoking an authority, right? The fatherland invokes the idea of a male authority associated, like when Adolf Hitler built Nazi Germany, all right, he was talking about the fatherland. And I think there is so much embedded in that type of language, the language of authoritarianism. But you're not going to distill this down to a byline. I think there are a myriad of reasons that people invoke God when it comes to doing whatever or thinking whatever they think.
Yeah. And there's going to be, I mean, you've got right wing extremists in Poland that are doing that death to the fatherland stuff, but that itself is not even representative of even the, norms within Christianity in Poland. So anyway, we got to move on, Michael. So I appreciate the call. Hopefully we can, maybe we can get some theists to call in and explain exactly, why they're okay with the more right wing authoritarian views within their religions. I don't know. Amanda's calling from Maryland. Prone to she or Amanda's a theist and an immigrant possibly facing deportation. So, Amanda, what's going on?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking my call. My name is Amanda. I am a questioning theist. My pronouns are she, her, and I was raised Catholic by strict Irish Catholic parents. Before we get started, please, could I prevail upon a moment of your time?
To do what?
Before we begin, can I presume upon your hospitality for a quick minute? I am so sorry about this. Please forgive me. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but the Trump administration is opening up the sealed records of immigrant children. I need your audience to know that if they know something.
So, Amanda, I don't know what's getting ready to happen, but all of this is incredibly weird. So I paused and muted because it sounds like you're an AI voice reading from a script. And now you're wanting to start the call by deciding to address a topic different from the one you called in about. Now, I have no idea in what world you thought that was going to be acceptable, but what's going on, Amanda?
Okay. I am facing deportation. I was raised Catholic by strict Irish Catholic parents. I'm not sure if putting American Christian or Christian on my asylum application would be viewed negatively or positively overseas. I have never been out of the United States. I don't know if you might have some sort of insight on that. I'm kind of coming into the end of my
You're an
instruction.
immigrant. You're an immigrant who's never been out of the United States.
Yes.
How does that work?
I was adopted as an infant internationally. My parents never knew that my citizenship was not automatic with my adoption. I found out when, I'm sorry, I am coming at this all wrong.
Yeah, I also don't know why you're reaching out to us. I mean, we have no expertise in where you're going, no matter where it is. We have no expertise in how different versions of Christianity are viewed. You should be talking to immigrations and customs officers wherever it is that you might have to go to. Nothing about this. Like, no offense, Amanda. This is a show with a couple of atheists where we're going to be engaging on whether or not religions are true. I have no idea why you're talking to us.
I'm sorry. I don't know where I'm going. And I don't know if putting Christian on my application would be viewed favorably or unfavorably outside the U.S. I've never been out of the U.S.
Yes, I got all that the first time, and neither of us know or would have any likelihood of knowing. And I'm not going to be advocating for people to. Why would you list anything?
Well, because I don't have a home country to be deported back to. The current practice is for immigration to reach out to different countries and see if they will accept me. So I don't know right now if putting Christian on that application would be detrimental to my asylum application or refugee application. I was raised Catholic, Irish Catholic parents. I am kind of at the end of my journey. I'm sorry?
That's not what I asked. I asked if you are a Christian.
Yes, currently. Cool. Questioning.
So if you're a Christian and somebody asks what your religion is, you would need, isn't honesty a feature of the Christianity that you're practicing?
I am not currently a practicing Christian. I've sort of drifted away from the Catholicism that I was raised in, most particularly within the last few months. I don't feel that it is in any way moral or fair for anyone, whether government or God, to be punishing someone for sins for which they are not responsible for.
Okay.
I don't know if it makes sense.
So why wouldn't you put no religion or atheist or agnostic or anything else?
Because it's a little difficult to disconnect from the religion that you grew up with. I don't have any hard evidence to prove that the God that I grew up believing in existed. But in the more recently, I have been drifting away from that for the reasons
Amanda,
previously.
I'm having all kinds of difficulty believing anything that you say, because I would imagine that if I was an adopted immigrant who had lived in the United States their entire life and who was facing the possibility of some weird deportation, the last concern of mine would be, which religion do I fill out on the form, as I struggle with my own lapsed Catholic views? If you're a lapsed Catholic, you don't give a fuck about any of this stuff. And what you put on the form is irrelevant. I just can't believe this is even a concern.
I don't know how to explain it. I'm sorry. They're trying to find a country that will take me in because I don't have a home country to be sent back to. I'm trying to increase my chances of being accepted into a country in which I can at least partially understand the language.
I don't think there's an answer to this question, certainly not one that we can help you with. Which country would determine whether or not they responded positively to the word Christian, Catholic, Muslim, whatever, in some sort of a byline on an application for extradition or relocation? And this is a question that needs to be handled by an expert in these matters, whether it's an immigration attorney, someone who understands international law. So my recommendation to you would be to speak to people who could actually help you. This is really a show that doesn't deal with those issues. This is not our lane. Thanks, Amanda, for calling. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. What just happened?
I don't know. Nothing about that scenario makes any sense to me. But even if everything that was said was true, yeah, what country? So you would think that whoever's helping, when she's like, they're looking for a country that will take me. Well, maybe you should tell them that you are religion fluid and are willing to write down whatever the fuck you need to write down on whichever form you need to write down. All you care about is your safety. And that would almost make sense to me. What doesn't make sense is calling in to the Sunday show on the line. Not even in the ballpark of, like, I work here, and if I was in this situation, it would not occur to me to reach out to anybody involved. I don't know.
And I'm seeing in the comments, they're like AI, AI, AI. I guess this is becoming more of a problem. We've certainly heard people changing their names, even using voice changing technology. Is it now a thing where people can call and it's just AI that we're speaking with? Because wow, that adds a whole new layer to the onion.
It
That's all
really
we need.
does. And
Yeah,
it
all we need.
there are some things that I can say to potentially test for it in some circumstances. And I don't want to be insulting because, if somebody's
Yeah,
in the situation that she's supposedly in, this it's terrible. I would like for you to be able to get some help, but on the other hand, I would also like for people to be honest or get the best information to make decisions. And I it did not have the feel of an AI response to me. The pauses weren't there
yeah.
at all. But it was all manner of weird. So let's try something else here. Calling in from Mexico. Is it Adriel?
Yes, it's Adriel.
Adriel.
Yes, nice to meet you, Matt and Seth. Well, I think I am a believer. I started a few years back to watch some the atheist videos, once animated, and first on Spanish, then animated, and then I found you, Matt, and Forrest too. So I was a teacher, I think is the right word, in a Sunday school from my church. I was, I used to have a really good relationship with my community, my Christian community. And then I start to watch those videos, and you say, you have not a good reason to believe what you believe. And I found myself in the same place. My reasoning wasn't that good. So I kinda was the part of, I think the constructed was the word. So then I was rejected by my community, my family, and I divorced myself. I don't know how to say that one. I lost my marriage and my house, and I am living in a very, very not good house. And I watched your show. I kind of like it. I think I am still a believer, but I kind of like your show. And then I saw the title of this show is Life as a Believer Better. And I think if some time to call is now, because yes, I think my life as a believer was better than now. So yes, I think I value truth for about beliefs. Yes, and that's it. I
So
I may I may I don't know English very well, but I will do as much as I can to respond.
no, it's fine. It's fine, Adriel. So basically what you're saying is you stopped believing and your whole life fell apart. You lost your spouse, you lost your house, and now you're looking at it and life was better as a believer. I appreciate the fact that you're calling in to say that, and that you listened to what the actual title for today's show was, because whether or not it's true, it's entirely possible that life as a believer could be better for some people. Is it going to be better for most people or everybody? That's, I guess, a broader question. So when you're saying that life is better, are there any aspects of your life as somebody who probably doesn't believe, that you would say are better, just not good enough?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question very well, but can you repeat that?
Is there any part of your life that is better now?
Well, some parts of my life are kind of better. I think of my core, I am just the same, just with the believing part, I think, because I think I am good. I think I have values and that thing. And I think I am still good. Mm, mm, and maybe mm, maybe I am better because I seek the truth as much as I can.
Yeah. So don't worry about it. And it could be. I guess what I'm asking is life bad enough that you would, if you could, go back to being a believer just to make life better, or would you not do that if you had the choice?
That's a tough one. So, uh, well, when I start to stop believing, I didn't know how much I was going to lose. So I guess I I never figured out that I was going to lose my wife. So, well, Christianity was part of my marriage, but I never wonder of I was going to lose that one, and neither my house. So, but I don't think I will, because with my knowledge now that will be like putting closing my eyes to something. I don't know how to
Right.
explain that word,
Oh no, I
but
think you explained it.
it's
I think you explained it perfectly, because
okay.
there are some people who are going to find their way out of religion, and life's going to get better. My life is better in many ways than it was when I was a believer, but not in every way. And there are some people for whom it's not going to get better overall. I think the fact that you're saying it's not going to get better, but I still value the truth, and I value the honesty and the integrity enough that I will put up with the fact that it's worse. And I think the thing to remember, Underhill, is that everything's going to keep changing. The longer you spend living your life and being you and being comfortable with what you do and don't believe, the less of an impact the disagreement and even, the loss of a marriage, those things all. Hell, I lost a marriage, and I was married to an atheist. So I mean that can happen. Fortunately, we're still great friends, and we both look at it now as if we're better off. But we didn't look at it that way at the time that it was happening. And so I think the only advice I can give is make sure that you are tied in with communities, that you reach out to something like recoveringfromreligion.org and engage with others, because you're not alone. And it should, if all of the evidence from everybody else's life is any indication, it should continue to get better, to where at some point in the future you may look back and say, yes, on the whole, my life is now definitely better than it was 10 years or 20 years ago.
thank you. That means a lot. And it's kind of ironic because the thing. Some years ago, I watched you because I wanted to find an argument so I can um, uh,
Yes.
win an argument.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you say the cosmological argument, the Pascal bet argument. So I wrote that one. So I keep rolling, and watching your show was no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. The first uh, motor engine, no, that's good, not good enough. And then, well, I don't have any. I don't have any more.
Yep.
and and I ever wonder if when I was going to call you, what is going to say to you, and what I call you is not what I was going to say
It's
to
not
you
what you
many years
expected.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can jump in real fast at the
Please.
end here, my friend, I want to draw one circle around something. If you ever
Sure.
needed to know how fundamental religious belief harms people, you have seen evidence of it in your own life. You have seen conditional love. You have disagreed on theology, still the same person on a journey trying to live truthfully. You're still good, but you were honest with people and said, I don't think I buy this anymore. And as soon as they heard you not validate them, as soon as they heard criticism, disagreement, difference, they left, they cut you off, they severed ties, and you paid the price for that. Well, one thing you can take away is you now have firsthand evidence of how those who say religion unites, well, it unites people of agreement. It unites tribes in groups, clubs, members only atmospheres. But fundamental religions, theistic religions, certainly, mostly they divide. It's us versus them. And when you dared to disagree and try to live with integrity, you became them. And I think that alone should show you why it's important to stand apart and stand against those bad ideas, because they splinter people. They cause people to cut other people off, and you've been a victim of that. But the gift that you gave yourself was a life of integrity. So I'm sorry for your problems. I really am. And I don't mean to be dismissive about that, but being true to yourself is huge. And I think it's worth pursuing a life where you live with integrity. Okay.
Thank you, Seth. It means a lot. I never thought that. I I think I see myself as the problem, but I never took them as a problem.
If you
I was
disagreed with religious family members or friends or a boss or a neighbor or whoever, and they heard your disagreement and cut you out of their lives, that's not your fault. That's their fault. Right? That's my point. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, that's what that was I am because I was calling you. Thank you for hearing me, Matt. I like your look, and Seth, you look like the guy from the Jurassic Park.
From the what?
Jurassic Park, the one.
Jurassic Park.
It's probably Jeff Goldblum, because I've heard that. That and
Yes.
Ferris Bueller. I've heard that
Yes,
one
that
before
one.
too.
Yes.
All right, you're
There
very
we go.
kind. Thanks for calling, bro.
Thanks so much, Adriel. I appreciate it.
All right, Matt.
I'm sitting
Come
here
on.
joined today by Jeff Goldblum.
Are you? Is your life is better today? How, Matt? Right? You were devout. You were fundy. You were hardcore. You left. Shit went down, but you wouldn't go back. Why?
Yeah. I wouldn't go back because I value the truth that much. And very clearly they either haven't demonstrated the truth or they've demonstrated that what they have is actually false. And so I don't have to get up and worship and genuflect and donate my time and my money to an organization that isn't tied to the truth. I can get up and give my time and money to organizations that do work towards the truth, that do work towards bettering people's lives, that advocate for principles that actually improve the lives of people here, rather than saying, "Oh, hey, you were born wrong. Don't worry. We'll figure it out in the next life if you do this and this and this," because it's the next life that matters. I get to focus on this life, the only one I know I'm going to get, and that gets to matter.
Amen, brother.
On that note, this one, I don't know that this matters in the grand scheme of things, because, I care about whether or not particular claims from any religion are true, and I care whether or not uh, living by certain, edicts or whatever uh, genuinely lead to the betterment of the world. But John's calling in from Ohio, pronouns are he, him, wants to talk about how the Bible relates to today's Middle East. Is this going to be relevant to whether or not it's true, John?
Yes. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Oh, it's this John.
Yes. I just heard on the breaking news where Netanyahu is saying that he's going to open the gates of hell. Are you ready for hell to be opened?
Do you think Netanyahu has the ability to open the gates of hell, John?
Well, we see what he did to Gaza, haven't we? And we know
John,
what he's planning for.
John, I'm asking you, do you think that Netanyahu has the ability to open the gates of hell?
Yes.
What happens when the gates of hell are opened, and how do you know?
Well, the gates of hell will be open when things go nuclear.
That's not what I asked. I said, what happens when the gates of hell are open, and how do you know?
When the earth is engulfed in nuclear war.
No, John, I'm asking you, and I'm asking you literally for the last time, when the gates of hell are opened, what happens, and how do you know?
Well, the people that are still here on Earth will have to face nuclear annihilation.
Goodbye, John. Don't call me again.
So was he saying that what the lake of fire is actually the fire from nuclear holocaust?
Yes, John.
And that's all part of the end times. I'm sorry, go ahead. You obviously were familiar with the guy.
Oh, he's called many times. John is a batshit crazy conspiracy theorist that finds hidden messages and understands things about the Bible that none of the rest of us possibly could. And it's all end time stuff. And yeah.
Does he ever get into like Bible code stuff? Because that sounds like the kind of dude that would respond to Da Vinci Code and numerology and all those types of things.
Yes, but here we go.
No, I was thinking about the. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead. A little bit of a delay.
Go ahead. What's it?
Well, I was thinking about the question of is your life better, and I was reflecting. I was getting all Lifetime movie in my heart about my post-religion life, beyond the fact that every day gets to be kind of a discovery. Like instead of having the answer and saying done, now I get to wake up and say, what else can I learn? But I think the one biggest thing is now I don't wake up in the morning and I'm not expected to judge the different. I think about all the time I wasted, all the energy I wasted when I was a believer, and it was, LGBT people. And I thought all Muslims were terrorists. And I spent all this time othering people and being uncomfortable by our differences when they didn't validate me. And when I left the faith, and I all of a sudden thought, whoa, wait a minute. Let's drop all that and let's reintroduce ourselves to the wide, wild spectrum of humanity out there. it really was amazing. It was like the whole world is an amusement park of humanity that I had never once before really properly been introduced to. And it wasn't scary and it wasn't dangerous. It was amazing. And being able to sort of participate to be one color in the kaleidoscope of the human condition, 8 billion people on the planet, and see us all as having equal worth. And, what a great world it would be if we didn't live in fear of each other. That's probably one of the best things about leaving. Beyond the being true to myself and wanting to believe what's true and reject what isn't, just that I don't have to judge everybody all the time. I think that's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to throw that out. Maybe somebody in the audience could relate to it.
Well, we can see. And we've got a couple of theists calling in on that topic. So, for example, Tom is calling in from Michigan. She doesn't have any preferred pronouns. So, but is explaining why life is better as a theist. So, Tom, welcome. Why is life better as a theist?
Well, I don't know if yeah, it's probably better because I think it's the truth. But I was like, we live in a jungle and God has always been around. I think that people have always thought about God, and it kind of makes it a little bit more exciting to have some kind of supernatural power over us.
What does excitement have to do with whether or not it's true, Tom?
Well, I mean, my personal thing, I know it's true, but just having a supernatural thing, I think it's a little bit more exciting than knowing everything. So I think if we knew everything, it kind of sucked. So I think just having the unknown, I think that's a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why would having answers to life's questions, even if we knew all the answers, why would that suck? Why would knowledge suck, Tom?
Because you'd wake up every day, you know everything. And that would be horrible. I mean, if you knew when you woke up, kind of like Groundhog Day, you knew when you woke up every day is the same exact, what's going to happen, what people are going to be doing, why the wind's, it's better to have something that you have a mysterious, thought about.
So is the idea of wanting a life of mystery the reason you believe in God, or did you have proof for the God?
I don't have any proof, obviously, because you can't have proof of God. I don't think you'd ever have proof of God. So, but just
how do you know that?
Things. Huh?
How do you know you can't have proof of God?
Because God's smarter than us. If we have proof of God, the only thing we have proof of is things that we can.
You just said because God's smarter than us, but so first of all, you would need to demonstrate that God is smarter than us, and then you would need to demonstrate that if something is smarter than us, it cannot have proof for itself. I asked why something doesn't have proof, and you didn't even make an attempt to answer that.
No, you can't prove that there's God. I mean, you just can't do it. I mean,
I've asked you, how do you know that?
Because God's smarter than us. Well, and like I say, it goes back to my personal.
No, that's literally what you told me last time, and I just explained how that's not in response to my question. So why would you say the same thing again?
Right. Because the belief of God, you got to believe that God is smarter. Right. I understand what you're saying. But
no, you don't understand. You don't understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
Tom, if I was an earthly parent who was much more well-informed, I knew much, 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 much more about the world. I was more cognitively developed than a 2-year-old, right?
Okay.
And that 2-year-old was my child. I could be more cognitively developed and have a lot more information. I could be more intelligent. You could put whatever requirement you want, right? Whatever cognitive requirement you want. But I could still prove myself to the child to make sure that the child always knows I exist and that child could be secure in that knowledge. So why would my intelligence or knowledge base have any bearing on whether or not I was proving myself to my own child?
Right, but you're just a human and, God is a little bit more advanced than us. So,
but why in the world wouldn't it make sense for a deity who loves me, right? He's counted all the hairs on my head, right? Not a sparrow will fall from the sky apart from my Father's care. How much more interested is he in me? Why in the world would that super smart, super knowledgeable father figure who loves me so much just prove himself to me. And he could do so because he's God in a way that I could understand. It doesn't mean that I have to be an equal intellectually. Doesn't mean I have to be a God myself for him to prove himself. Doesn't that seem like a minimum requirement for fatherly love?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see. I mean, he proves himself to some people, not to everybody.
Which
And I don't know
people,
why.
Tom?
How do
You know,
you
you
know that
think
he's
of,
ever proved? How do you know that he's ever proved himself to anyone?
oh, because if you're one of those people that have seen miracles, you know for a fact that there's a God.
No.
But if you've never
Tom, it's very clear you're not serious. You're not a serious thinker. You're not serious. You're not seriously listening to what we say. You're not seriously thinking about this, and you're not seriously coming up with responses. So, is there a punchline that you wanted to get to? Because you're not going to get to it. So, I'd love to have someone who seriously thinks about these things. Because when your response is, yeah, but you're just a human. And oh, the reason we know this is because God's smarter than us, and therefore there can't be evidence for him. Well, I'm smarter than you, and there's evidence for me. And there's evidence that I'm smarter than you. So being smarter than you, caller, is a very, very low bar. Being smarter than all of us is a pretty nice bar. And yet, as Seth was pointing out, you could have someone that's smarter than all of us, views all of us as infants in our intelligence. And that person could still demonstrate that they are in fact real. And that would actually make you think that it would be boring to know everything. So you like some mystery, but you're comforted by the fact that somebody knows everything. Cool. You can be comforted by the fact that somebody knows everything, even if they don't actually know everything. You can do it even if they don't actually exist. You can be comforted by the idea that there's someone there. So you could say that life is better if you're a believer because you willingly accept that while you can't demonstrate it, you're going to take comfort in the idea that there's somebody who understands the things that you don't, which is just a long way of admitting that you don't understand some things. And it'd be much better at the beginning, instead of saying, I don't understand some things, therefore God, to instead say, I falsely concluded there was a God because I don't understand some things. That
It's
second
weird.
one there, that's good.
The Bible says, trust not in your own understanding, The idea is, who has known the mind of God? And that same Bible says God is not the author of confusion, as billions upon billions of his followers can't agree on the basics of their faith. And this weird notion that, well, because he loves us and because he has to manifest himself only as God, he must be an enigma. He has to hide behind the rock and speak in parables and make the whole our lives a Rube Goldberg gauntlet that we have to run through and try to survive. To me, it just sounds like a form of slavery. Why in the world would we adore someone who purposefully made this thing so hard? That's not love, and it's certainly not fatherly love.
Well, we have more callers and we have more theists, and they're just going to take priority. So calling in from Canada is Boom. Pronouns are he, him. Boom is calling in to share the gospel of the good news of our Lord, and that they're not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God to salvation to everyone who believes. So we got some Romans action going on here. Boom. Can you share the evidence for why the gospel is real?
Hello, hello.
This is going to be a tedious one, isn't it, Matt? I can just feel it.
I'm thinking so. Hey, Boom, can you provide the evidence for why you think the gospels are true and real?
Hello, hello, hello.
I knew it.
Like, what does that do for someone? What does that do? What sort of a 6-year-old itch does that scratch? You're sitting in your mama's basement trying to find weird ways to amuse yourself so you hear a series of vowels and consonants that you strung together for a second before you get banned from a call-in show. I mean, what kind of a high does somebody get from that? I don't really understand. Find a different
Well, maybe we can
sandbox.
do better.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do better because we've got Janet calling in from Kansas, and Janet's pronouns are she, her, and wants to discuss if life is better as a believer. So, Janet, is it better as a believer?
Hi. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for taking my call. Matt, you are kind of the atheist to talk to. I've been talking with atheists for about 2 years now, and you're kind of the one that everybody references in the circle that I'm in. So I'm a little bit nervous.
Well, I'm sure I will be disappointing and very, very much an asshole.
Well, you haven't been yet, and you've had plenty of opportunities where you could have so far. So I feel okay.
Well, Seth is
I
keeping
would
me
say
calm.
keeping you in line. Okay. I would say that life for me as a believer is not necessarily better, but I think that life is going to be better as a believer is how they kind of lure you in. I think that I grew up with this notion that it was going to be better if you did everything right and you're a believer. Your life's going to be so much better than anybody else. You're not going to have any problems. Every need's going to be taken care of, kind of the whole prosperity type thing. So I think that they lure people in with that. And I think they do a real disservice to people because many times your life is not better. It's harder. And I think especially if you are a sincere Christian practicing what Christ taught, not necessarily what doctrine or religion teaches, but actually the practices simply of Jesus, your life is not always better. It's, for me, been a lot of times harder. Seth, a little bit ago, was talking about when you do something different from, your church group, like my family, my church group, when you don't agree with them, they just cut you off. And I've experienced that in a believer, within a church of believers. If I don't believe the same thing that they believe, I've been cut off. I've been, told I'm going to hell, whatever. So, that's really emotionally traumatic and difficult. And, just because I'm a believer, I don't say a prayer and then a check comes in the mail. And I can't tell you how many preachers I've heard say, oh, you just pray about it and then you never know, a check's going to come in the mail. That's not realistic. That's not what happens. So I think that they try to lure people in with this and they try to keep them in. Like if you just hang on long enough, meanwhile, you're just sitting there waiting for your life to be better, missing it as it goes by because it just is what it is. So would I say it's better? I think that many people that I have spoken with that are not believers, kind of like you said, their lives are better in a lot of ways than mine. They do seem happier. The burden is off of them that maybe they had their whole lives, and I understand that burden. So I would not necessarily say that it's better.
Well, can I throw this out, Janet? I
Yeah.
think we have to define better.
Yes.
In many ways,
Yes.
I've lost relationships and I'm
Yeah.
estranged from many in my family. And I am right now, I'm low on the list, but I am now part of a pretty marginalized group in what is a rising Christian nationalist zealotry
Ugh.
and kind of the pre-Gilead, which is the United States. Things in many ways are more difficult, but my life is better because I am living authentically. So I think, is your life better because, the logistics of your life are better, or is your life better because you are living authentically despite the challenges? I think we have to define, what do you mean by better,
I think you're exactly right. It's that for me, living authentically, I really do believe in God. That's just my position. So for me to authentically live that, no matter what my circumstances, yes, for me, it is better because
Okay, well, let me jump in,
exactly what
Janet.
you
I'm
said.
sorry.
It's authentic for me.
I want to make sure that we're being good stewards of everybody's time, and I don't want to monopolize Matt's time either. But are you saying that the church dangles like trinkets in front of people and says, if you're a Christian, things are going to go your way? And that's how
Yes.
they entice people into the doors to drop to their knees and say the salvation prayer, when the truth is that life will continue to be hard. And you wonder if it's maybe a bait and switch, or maybe they're selling them something that is not an honest selling point. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, that's
And
exactly what I would say.
And so is the other side of that, or the next step of that, that it's this life is sort of like boot camp. This is the hard life where God gets us through. We have to rely on him. He tests our faith. And ultimately, the reward comes after we die and we enter heaven.
Well, that's what I've been raised to bet my life on.
Well, what do you believe?
I believe that that could happen. Could I say I know? No, because nobody really knows. But I do believe that there's something after this world. And because of what I've been raised with, it's, the paradigm in my head is that it's going to be heaven. It's going to be a better place. So
That's
at
as
this
honest
point
an
in my
answer
journey
as
in
I've
my
heard,
life,
I think.
Yeah, this is at
You're a
my
product
journey.
of. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Forgive me, Janet. That's my fault. Go ahead.
No, just in my journey at where I am with Christianity and where I am with everything. Yes, that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Okay. Because of your background and how you were primed, your notions of what an afterlife might be are going to lean toward Christianity. But mostly you think, well, there's likely something out there. There is a continuation of some kind which cannot be proven, but I'm holding on to that. You're sort of, I don't know if hedging your bets sounds insulting, but you're leaning in that direction. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
I would
I
say
don't know.
that's fair to say.
That's all I had. Matt, I don't know if you wanted to jump in and take over.
Does it matter, Janet, more if what you believe is true or more if what you believe is comforting?
To be honest, I think there is a mix of both. I really do believe it to be true. I really do.
That's not.
It is also
not an answer
comforting.
to the question.
Okay, say it. Ask me the question again, because maybe
The question
I really didn't.
was, does it matter to you? Does it matter more whether or not it's true, or does it matter more whether or not it's comforting? Because it can be a mix of both.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I think true. For me, true.
I find it strange that in your case, the one aspect of religion that you seemed the most confident in was an afterlife. And of all the claims that religions make, the notion of an afterlife that you would experience is, as far as I can tell, the most obviously false claim that any of them make, and many of them do. And so when somebody tells me they care more about whether it's true than whether or not it's comforting, and their primary justification is an afterlife, something about that doesn't register correctly with me, because it's like, if your religion said 10 things and you decided that the most absurd one, the one that's most in conflict with the available evidence, is the one that's most probably worth talking about as true.
I'm thinking, processing that through my brain. I get that. I hear you.
Not only is there no good reason to think that a soul does exist or could exist, but there's considerable reason to think that nothing like a soul actually can exist. that, the things that make me me, the identifiable aspects of a soul, my likes, my preferences, my memories, these are all identifiable functions of a physical brain that can be manipulated and altered without seemingly uh, ending that person's existence. So you can suffer brain trauma and wind up with
Hmm.
a completely different personality, a completely different or an absence of memories, and essentially be a completely new person. If you were Christian before your brain injury and you're not afterwards, did the soul leave the body and escape? Is it no longer in control of the body? Is it trapped in the body? Is it, uh, what is the math that you can do that shows what happened to a soul there? And then get into like split brain patients, which I'd recommended a talk from V.S. Ramachandran, specifically talking about a patient that suffered uh, I think it was a hemispherectomy of the corpus callosum. And when that happened, in order to stop grand mal seizures across the brain, and when that happened, there were now two distinct people, two completely independent personalities in that one body that communicated independently. One of them would be able to use the language centers. The other one would have to write or point with a hand. And they had different likes and preferences. They had different memories. And yes, one of them was a theist and one of them was an atheist.
Wow.
If you look up and just seriously, just watch that talk from V.S. Ramachandran, in that scenario, that tells us so much about how our brains do and don't work that you need to ask, is that an example of a soul being split in two? Did the half that was a believer keep the whole entire soul? Did the half that was a non-believer keep the entire soul? Was there no soul at all? If there's a further brain chemistry or physical alteration that results in another change, how does that get resolved with anything related to souls and religion? And this is why, for me, the notion of a soul is the most obviously dead concept in all of religion.
That's interesting. I'll have to listen to this again, obviously. I do have epilepsy. I have a seizure disorder. So the brain stuff is really that's really fascinating to me. Brings up another whole line of questions.
Our moderator, just put a link to the Ramachandran talk in chat right now.
Okay.
So if it doesn't survive with the show, somebody will be, but you'll at least be able to see it. But it's V.S. Ramachandran. It's a great talk. It's probably 15 or more years old now, but it's really good stuff.
Well, my daughter's out there watching this, so hopefully she's taken a note. She'll write that down for me.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that at no point does it prove that there's not a soul, because the soul is an unfalsifiable proposition. If you want to claim that there's some magical being that makes you you and it survives your death and isn't tied to the physical plane, you can make that claim, because I don't know how you could disprove it. But what I can show is that the characteristics and features that are attributed most commonly to a soul are all identifiable and malleable functions of the brain. And so then the question becomes, when we change the brain such that we have a different personality or multiple personalities or any number of things, when we change the brain, what did we do to a soul? Did we cut it in half? Did we change the soul? Did we confine the soul to a different area? And the most reasonable conclusion is that there's no soul to do anything to. What there are mysteries about our brain and our identity that we describe using different language. And for the bulk of human existence, the language of religion and souls served as the most popular and comforting explanation for our brains and what they do. And it's time that we grow up and move beyond those comforting explanations and get a better understanding of our brain, because it may be the single most important part of who we are.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of discussions on that actually with atheists lately, just with all of the research that's coming out. This one guy that I watched that's a doctor that does just so many different brain scans, and they're talking about love, and they're talking about these emotions in different places in the brain where it lights up, and you can actually see where it's coming from. So that is something that I have actually been hearing. I've been hearing about in different discussions. So interesting.
Be careful. There's a lot of pseudoscience in there. Instead of reaching conclusions about brain stuff, I think that I'm much more a fan of listening and allowing it to open more questions and bring more doubt on things that we, to paraphrase Bertrand Russell, to hang a question mark on things we've long taken for granted. And
right.
The sort of language that you use when you're talking about an afterlife and a soul, these are personal descriptions that aren't necessarily tied to any view of religion, and they get more to the core of who we are as human beings. Because let's imagine that you and I are standing there, Janet, we're having a conversation, and I just fall down dead.
Mm-hmm.
And we live 3,000 years ago. We were just out tending the fields, and I just fell over dead. How does your brain cope with that? What story do you make up? Because clearly there's something that has left me. Something that was there animating me a moment before, that was causing me to stand up and causing me to say stuff, is now clearly gone, is how anybody would reasonably view it. Not, hey, there's a machine that's broken. When your computer
Right.
stops working, or when your car stops working, you're not like, oh, the soul of the car has left. You don't
Right.
do that. And it's because you have an understanding of that car as a mechanical invention and creation. If you have truly have a look at humans as an evolved mechanical chemical process, then the correct way to describe me falling down out there in front of the field is Matt broke. Matt.exe has ceased functioning. But
Well,
instead,
and I get that, because when I have a seizure, it's almost like I explain it to people as my brain did a reset. It did the Control Alt Delete. I mean, I get that. That's how I explain it to people.
Go out and investigate more, and don't draw too many conclusions. Just start poking holes in all the other things that you took for granted.
Will do.
Thanks, Janet.
Thanks for taking my call. Bye.
Take care.
It's funny, on my I have a second show called True Stories with Seth Andrews, where we talk about things that have happened all around the world and in our past. And you mentioned how alterations to the brain can change personality. It was an interesting coincidence. Just last week, I told the story of Phineas Gage, who was this guy who was working for the railroad, and his job was to put explosive in boulders and blow the hell out of them to make room, flat ground for the railroads. And you were supposed to drill a big hole and you jam it full of explosives, and there's a protective sand layer on top, and you tamp everything down. Well, he didn't put the sand in. So we took this 3-foot iron rod, tamped the explosive, it sparked, and it blew the rod through his skull, through his brain. The rod landed 80 feet away. He was in and out of consciousness, in and out of comas, but somehow within a few months, this guy, who was known by everyone as the sweetest, most genteel, kind, jovial, humorous, wonderful human being, he was back on his feet. He was walking around town just a few months later, but his personality changed. He became caustic. He became nasty. He was forgetful. He couldn't hold a job. He didn't know where he was. He was and he was cruel to people. It had the change in his brain, the physical alteration of his brain, the damage had actually changed who he was as a human being. So those people who talk about how, well, the soul is actually the driver of our personalities, and it somehow permeates, it goes from the spiritual into the physical. First of all, that's a scientific question. because you would see a conduit point where the spiritual did actually interact with the physical. But secondly, we know that physical alterations to brain tissue changes who we are. It changes how we function, which is another refutation to the idea of a soul. Anyway, that's an interesting story. Phineas Gage. Everybody, look it up.
Yep. It's one of the best of many examples. I always reference Ramachandran's talk because I just sit there like a kid on Saturday morning cartoons, laying on the floor with my head. I just listened to Ramachandran talk about brain stuff like I would watch Saturday morning cartoons. It was,
I'm going to bookmark it. I've never heard of it. I've actually pulled it up. I've got it saved. So when I'm driving to tennis tonight, I'm going to pop it up and just listen to it on my phone. So
I'll bet you money that if you don't wind up having him as a guest on one of your shows, it's only because he didn't reply.
I'd totally be interested. I'm a small fish. I don't know if he would respond, but I'm always interested in talking about brain science,
Ramachandran is, for me, as a layman, the most important neuroscientist of the modern era. And not only is there that talk there where he talks about the split brain patient, he is part of the team, I believe, that discovered and came up with therapies using mirror neurons for people with phantom limb syndrome. So like they've got a limb that's no longer there, but their brain perceives it as being clenched in pain. And so you can put a mirror box over where the limb should be and put your other limb there so that your brain sees the limb that exists and its reflection. And you can use that to release your hand to help the phantom limb unclench. You can do the same thing where you take a hammer and you hit a fake limb that is in a position where your real limb should be and a mirror there, and you will feel the pain. The only thing that stops you from fully experiencing the pain are the mirror neurons that allow you to know, oh, that's an image. That's not the thing. There's lots more there, but it's just really cool stuff. All right. Calling in from Oregon, pronouns are she, her. Everett is a theist that has a question about, is God evil if heaven is infinitely good? I genuinely don't understand the question. So Everett, let's start over. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, it's I phrased it kind of poorly, sorry. But basically,
no problem.
The question is, so I called TACIS a few weeks ago and talked about it was God evil, and came to the conclusion that they are, or they would be if they existed. Sorry. But if heaven were so good, so amazing that it like fixed and made anyone who went in there like happy to be there, and it was worth every second of existing, no matter how horrible your life was, would God be evil then?
I'm trying to understand here. If upon arrival in heaven, God made things so good that you would view all the lead up worth it, would that be evil? Is that what you're asking?
Would God be evil specifically for making us like go through Earth?
Oh, so this is kind of, if I'm understanding this right, this is kind of a question of, do the ends justify the means? And so
yeah,
if God's goal is to make sure that everybody's living this idyllic existence, does that justify what God put you through? And so then my follow-up question, I guess, is, was it required for us to go through whatever we went through in order to achieve that goal? And is it impossible for God to create the circumstances of us having the advantage of having lived through it without having the experience of having lived through it.
Yes. I would say, yeah.
So if it's necessary, then I would say that God isn't necessarily evil, but he could be. And if it's unnecessary for us to actually go through, experience, and remember the bad times, if that is actually unnecessary, then yes, in fact, God would have done something evil. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But if heaven was so amazing that it made like the time on earth functionally relevant, does it make him evil then for something that at the end of the day nobody like would care about, nobody would be harmed by?
Yes, it still matters. The immorality was done either way. You don't just get to, you're basically suggesting that the ends justify the means. Like, hey, was it wrong for me to slaughter that family of 4 if it led to a change in gun control regulation? Yes, it was still immoral for you to slaughter that family of 4.
Okay. But isn't it different if the family of 4 afterwards was perfectly content?
After being slaughtered? No, hang on.
Yeah.
Is this a riff on God is using the trial and tribulation of this imperfect world to, first of all, strengthen our faith, to increase our reliance, our faith muscle, right, which we have to flex so that he can carry us through, and perhaps to earn greater rewards in the afterlife, a bigger mansion, more jewels in my crown. This is a precursor, a testing ground, but the reward is coming. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. It could be used for that, but I'm more specifically just wondering if God would be evil if heaven was good.
If heaven was all
Heaven was
good, and that same deity had created a finite model for existence, which included the rape of a child, right? Or the drowning of 250,000 people with one tsunami in one day, or all kinds of abuse or neglect or starvation or suffering. You're saying, well, is at the end, if it all sort of worked out, wouldn't we give God a pass on the temporary suffering because of the eternal bliss that he gave us? Is that the question? Because it sounds to me like a ridiculous question. Suffering is suffering, whether it's finite or not, is it not? And what kind of a benevolent, all good father figure would ever subject anyone or anything to suffering?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
That's all I got, Everett.
Yeah. Sorry, just bad thought process, I guess. However,
No, don't be sorry. I mean, that's what the purpose of the conversation's about. But I think suffering is suffering, whether it lasts 5 minutes or 5 million years. I mean, it's suffering. And especially if it is preventable by an omnipotent father figure who supposedly loves us all, I think that answers the good evil question pretty quickly, okay?
The analogies are only made difficult because you're comparing the limited with the unlimited. So, for example, as it stands right now, a doctor may need to take a scalpel and slice your throat open, which under normal circumstances outside of performing a proper tracheotomy in order to save one's life would be considered doing harm and causing suffering. But in an emergency situation, performing a tracheotomy is wholly justified because death is the alternative. And so engaging in some of that harm, that is how that sort of thing works. As soon as you say, let's move forward to some incredible future where we no longer need to get a piece of metal and gouge open somebody's throat to perform a tracheotomy, but instead we can teleport the offending matter directly out of their throat. Now, all of a sudden, that changes under what circumstances a tracheotomy would be immoral. You can keep going up that ladder until you get to God. And if the question is, do we have to actually experience the suffering to get the benefit? Then God is irrelevant to the suffering benefit discussion. And if we don't have to experience the suffering to get the benefit, if it's possible for God to create the benefit without the suffering, and the suffering still occurs, then that means God has morally failed. And if it's only possible for us to experience, to understand it upon experiencing it, God may still be an immoral failure for failing to come up with a better system that doesn't require suffering. So there's no real solution to this. But thanks, Everett. Do you have a good reason to believe in a God at all?
I don't think so. I'm kind of in the
Okay.
process of deconverting.
It's all good. When I see an actual theist call in, I'm happy to try to answer their questions in the hopes that maybe they can answer mine. And in your case, the answer is no, I don't have a good reason, which is fine. Great, even. Keep going.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Everett. Have a good evening.
Matt, if I can interject quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. What's up?
I had asked for the opportunity to let everybody know about, and this is a digression, but
let's do it.
Especially now, I think a lot of people who are not religious people are seeking out opportunities for community to come together to spend time with those who aren't, trying to marginalize or ostracize or even extradite them. And there's some major free thought events on the calendar. I have them all listed on the thinkingatheist.com/events, but the two big ones, the first one's coming up, and I'll be in Orlando, but they have a major lineup for the Florida Free Thought Conference, and tickets are available for that. But it is probably my favorite conference of the year, and so you can go to freeflow.org, and they've got details. And then coming up Easter weekend, and they always do it Easter weekend, is the next big one on the calendar, and that's the American Atheist National Convention. You can go to atheist.org, and they've got details on that. That's going to be in Minneapolis, so they're going to Minnesota for that in the middle of April. And then there's a bunch of other ones. I've got, I see Nashville's coming up. There's several events going on in Canada and beyond. And I, there are some people who will huff and scoff and say, well, there's just atheist church, or, all a bunch of sheeple getting together to, to live in a thought bubble. But it's so much more. It's
not atheist church. It's like the Southern Baptist Convention for atheists.
I just think to come together, and we learn stuff, and the speakers are amazing, and all that's well and good. But just being with hundreds of people who get you, the personal connections that we make and the time we spend, and just not feeling like we're losing our minds for a weekend is so worth it. And there are people who travel from well out of state. We've had people travel from outside the country to come here to go to Free Thought events. And I just think, right now we need community, and I think we need reassurance, and we're better together. So I'm looking forward to getting out of the studio and spending time with people and catching up and making new friends and seeing old friends. And so if you want to see a list of the conferences, and I'll be adding more as they come, thethinkingatheist.com/events should have everything you need with links right there. And thanks.
Rock on. We've got a caller calling in. Dan from Florida, no pronouns given, listed as inquisitor. If Matt and Seth are atheists and Christianity isn't going anywhere anytime soon, why not help make Christianity better? Oh, that's easy, Dan, because I care whether or not it's true. But here's another question. If pronouns aren't going anywhere, why won't you tell us what your preferred ones are?
I just didn't think it was relevant. You can just call me Dan. I prefer to be male. How's that? Does that help?
So you prefer he, him as the general pronouns for you?
Well, I'm a guy. A man. Just Dan. I mean, I didn't know this was going to be relevant.
It's funny, Dan. It's funny, Dan, is I just asked you, and you're like, I'm a guy. I'm a man. And I just for clarification just said, so you prefer he, him pronouns? And you couldn't say yes, which makes me wonder, do you have a different pronoun preference?
Okay, man, I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to answer the question. I've never really been asked that.
You
I've
didn't
never
know
been
how to
asked that.
answer. I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
Dan, for clarity, this is a call-in
Yeah.
show, and I'd like for the conversations to be good. And if somebody can't
Okay.
figure out how to answer a yes or no question, that doesn't bode well for the rest of the conversation, does it?
Well, can you ask me it again? Because I didn't hear it. I don't know if I heard a yes or no answer that would be relevant in there. Can you ask it again? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Can you try again, please?
Sure. So
Yeah.
the question that I'm going to ask you again is, so you're saying you
Okay.
prefer he, him pronouns?
Yeah. Yes. How's that?
Yeah. Why was it so difficult to do that now instead of the first time that I asked?
Sorry, Matt. I just don't think in those terms. I've never heard of that before. I've never
You've
been in
never
that
been
position
asked.
before.
You've never been asked a yes or no question about what your preference is for something?
For that specifically, yes.
You've never been asked a yes or no question about something, one of your preferences?
No one ever asked me before if I prefer a he or him pronoun. That's my answer.
No, I'm
Is that
saying
okay?
nobody's ever asked you to answer if you prefer something nobody's ever asked you for clarification
Yeah.
on an idea that you expressed before.
Oh, absolutely. People have, yes.
Cool. So if people have asked you for clarification on things you said before, why is it that when I asked you for clarification on something you said, we had to spend 2.5 minutes on it?
Well, I don't know. I thought we could just move on. I don't understand why we're talking about this, to be
Do you
honest.
think that we're likely to
don't get it.
move on when I've asked you a question and then you've dodged and I sought clarification and then I asked you again and then we finally get to an answer? Do you think that why should I care about anything else you have to say if it's this hard figuring out whether or not you prefer he, him pronouns?
Man, I'm sorry if it sounds like I was dodging. I know who I am and what I'm
I don't,
thinking. I know it
and I
wasn't
don't need an
dodging.
apology. I'm not looking for an apology, and I'm not for and by the way, that's not how you
Yeah,
apologize. You don't say I'm sorry if it sounds like I was dodging. That puts the onus on the other person. So you don't know how to answer yes no
Okay.
questions, and you don't know how to apologize. So let me ask you this: if Seth and I
Sure.
care about whether or not Christianity is true, and Christianity hasn't met its burden of proof, then it would be silly for us to help make Christianity better, right?
Well, I care about whether it's true or not, and I agree with you
I'm sorry,
that
Dan. I'm sorry, Dan. I
Go
didn't
ahead.
ask you whether or not you care about whether or not it's true. I said, if we care about
Yeah.
whether or not it's true, and it turns out it's
Yeah.
not, it would be silly for us to help promote it, right?
Not necessarily.
Why not?
Can I give my?
Why
Yeah.
if something turns out to not be true and we care about promoting truth, why would that not be a problem for us to promote something that turns out to not be true?
And there I am for 36 years. I don't know that would be the case. I'm pondering it. I have been for a long time, considering my position. Because
I'm sorry, but you called in to say that since Christianity isn't going anywhere, we should help make it better. What if making it go away is what makes it better?
it just might. That might be the answer.
Cool. When you figure it out and you
Maybe
figure
if
out
I
how to
told
answer
you,
yes or no questions and talk about pronouns, call me back. Okay. I don't know why this is so difficult.
I was curious as to what would make it better. He may have had opinions about. I mean, how do you make Christianity better? I don't really understand what that would look like.
It would be interesting. Dan, call us back sometime and keep going. And you can say, here's what I think would make Christianity better. If there was some evidence for it. Here's what I think would make Christianity better. And I don't think that like Seth and I need to spend time making Christianity better. It's like I've Dennis Lubay, who hosted nonprofits with me for quite a while. Hey, Dennis, miss you, love you. He famously was asked, like, if you help people get rid of religion, what do you replace it with? And Dennis's answer, which I will remember until the day I'm dead, was, when you cure the cancer, what have you replaced it with? You know, getting rid of the
Yeah.
religion is the reward. Curing the cancer is the reward. The state of being healthy is an absence of the cancer. And the state of thinking rationally is an absence of the religion.
Dan Barker, who said, if there is no master, whose slave will I be? You know?
Exactly.
And I just think I always kind of like that was phrased, the way that was phrased. Why would I want to take a lie and make it better? In fact, I think a more dressed up, trussed up, more impressive on its exterior lie may be more dangerous than the other version, right? I want a lie to look unpleasant.
Yep. It's so wild. Why is it always these guys who desperately want people to know they're guys who won't tell me what their pronouns are and make me jump through hoops just to figure out? It's so weird. Anyway, we got a couple of atheist callers that have been on hold for quite a while. Lucas has been on hold from Brazil for hours almost. So, hey, Lucas, welcome to the show. You're on with Seth and Matt.
Hi, Seth. Hi, Matt. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you back off your mic just a little bit? You're kind of distorted.
Okay. Is this better?
Yep.
Okay. So first, thank you for taking my call. I'm a little anxious. I'm sorry. Second, I'm from Brazil, so I'm sorry for any language barriers. But yeah, I would like to talk about how we, as atheists or as skeptics, how we could build and maintain a community, because I see a lot of people drifting towards religion in search for a community, and I think that we, as I don't know if we would say as a movement, as a people, as a group of people who are in disagreement with a lot of religious practices, and who are, I think, looking out for the way religion are most of the time treating people in an unhealthy manner, in abusive manners. How we could look to build our own community, so we could extend a hand to those people who are looking for a community and who shouldn't have to go to some church or something like that to look for a religion, where they would, I think, get more bad things than good things, I think.
Yeah. Seth, have you got thoughts on community building? I mean, I think it's what
he speaks
some
to
of us have been trying to do for decades.
one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we have the herding cats thing going on. We also have those, I think, who have come out of high control religious communities, and they were scarred by that. Maybe there's still some open wounds from those religious cultures. And so they're very gun shy about joining a group, because to them it feels like maybe they're re-entering, maybe they are going to a different kind of church, which is what we'd spoken to before. They don't trust people. Maybe they got burned because there was political drama. We've all seen groups, atheist, religious, all kinds of groups who erupt in drama and division, and so they don't want any of that. Some people just are above it all. You know what? I'm not a sheep. I'm going to live my life independently. I'm not. Groupthink is not my deal. And I think these people have cheated themselves out of one of the greatest parts of human experience, which is sharing our lives and having community. And many people have bought the lie that getting together as a community is a religious exercise. It is a kind of church by default, which is total horseshit, right? The church does it extremely well. And the church has sold the idea that it owns healthy community. But it certainly does not, right? Community precedes religion. And I'd love to see us as free thinkers find greater and more opportunities. I mentioned the conventions, but I mean, even at the local and regional level, even at the relational level, coming together and building each other up, developing relationships, showing solidarity, making friends, just making memories together. And I think that's going to have to start with us doing a better job of understanding that getting together and sharing life and setting shared goals and protecting and advocating for each other in a community environment is not a religious thing. It's a human thing. But do you speak to a real challenge that we have? I know Kansas City Oasis and Houston Oasis, and we've got a lot of secular groups that are doing, community here and there, but I don't think we're seeing nearly enough of it, unless Matt knows about something that I don't. So.
No, and I was really pointing out that this is something that a lot of us have been pushing for many years. Like, for example, I worked with and ran the atheist community of Austin, and we tried to focus on the community being, the key aspect of this. That wasn't just another atheist media thing, but things become whatever they become. But the community building is a difficult process, and it's made more difficult by the fact that religions have financial and default advantages with government in almost every country. But I mean, just looking at from the United States, by default, religions get a tax-free exempt status, and they get a de facto kind of gravitas or clout just in community by virtue of the fact that the majority of people buy into some religion or another. And so if you pack up and move, having a church in your new area is one huge advantage that you're going to have. If you're part of a secular community, if you're part of Kansas City Oasis or Houston Oasis or any of the other groups, and you pack up and you move, you may get to a place where there is nothing. And that's why we need to be encouraging and building people up a network to say, okay, there's not one in your area, create one. We can lend you some resources. We can show you what went right with our group. We can show you what failed here. And it's going to take time. And we are in a position where even in our country, massive setback. In other countries where there's not separation of church and state or separation of religion and government, it can be virtually impossible. And you may need informal, unrecognized communities that start online to make sure that people are safe and can interact.
Yeah, I have a lot of these difficulties, and it's like comforting hearing them from you, because I think we as a community, we have a lot of, I think, very good, very even welcoming pillars. I think the line as a channel is a great community. I'm very thankful for everybody's work there, especially Jimmy's. I think recovering from religion is a great pillar in that direction. But I have this difficulty here in Brazil, in especially my friends circle, to kind of get something like that going in my university. I think of like assembling a group to talk like weekly about stuff, and it's kind of hard because people always look like, well, what are you talking about? A group of atheists? What would even be the question? And it's really hard. The thing that made me want to call was, if you allow me, a very very short anecdote. I was in Reddit, and I was in a subreddit about my own city, São Paulo, and there was a guy talking about how he had like a very rough life. He was like obviously suffering from mental health issues, from financial issues, and he was posting kind of asking somebody for church recommendations, and if he should go to church, and if what would be the best church. And in the end of his post, he put a phrase something like, "Hey Jesus, if you're reading this, please come into my life." And I was like, wow, like God is a real hard sell, but God on Reddit would be like a huge sell. So it got me thinking. Like I did comment on the post, like, yo, I don't think a church would be the best solution for you right now, but and it kind of got me really sad because I didn't have an alternative to, like, hey, we have this group, we meet weekly on a park, on a bar, and we talk about and we help each other. And it got
Yep.
me thinking, like, how can I start something here, like a YouTube channel or something that would really take root in a future community, you know?
A lot of these things started off as online groups, just meetups on forums and stuff like that. And then it became, hey, let's meet up in person. Some of them, like this one, focus more on creating content. But yeah, there's little meetups, and people are adding more of them. If there's not one in Sao Paulo, you should start one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm trying to organize something in my universities. But yeah, I would like to hear your take on it, and and yeah, I think it's something that sometimes we, and again, as atheists or as skeptics, we give a lot of thought and a lot of work time and effort in discussion and building content. But I think we should also looking out for ourselves and each other. You know, taking some time and effort to ask around and see how everybody's doing, and really build this sensation of we are a group and we help each other and we have something in common, and maybe this can build up to something that would be really influential, and then maybe it would be like in an opposition to a religious community. So something like you said, that churches and religions claim to have this monopoly on religion and healthy relationships, and they don't.
That's true. Well, Lucas, I wish you luck. Let us know if you you might create a tiny little group that becomes an international headquarters for expanding atheism internationally. You never know which group's going to take off. We talked about the Florida Free Thought community and Free Flow being one of our favorite gatherings. I mean, that could become anything could become a world-changing organization once the right people get involved and decide that that's what they want to do. So I appreciate the call. Thanks for the wait. We will talk to you later.
See ya. I have two thoughts.
We have, go ahead.
If I may. First, I want to make and you drew a circle around this too. Online community is community. When I left my faith, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I was surrounded by evangelicals, and I just felt adrift. And I had a lot I wanted to say, and I wanted to feel like I wasn't alone. And I was like, is anybody else out there? And how can I interact? And it was an online community that helped me to navigate some very turbulent waters. And so there's no replacing in-person community, but online community is super valid as well. And I don't want anyone to ever dismiss that. The second thought I had is, one thing that church communities have been really good at, and I'll use the word good with an asterisk, is that people who are in need of support, financial support, they need childcare for their kids, they need divorce recovery support, they're going through addiction, they are alone, and they simply need a sense of family and purpose and all of these other things. Churches have been really good at scratching those itches. I'm not saying that they're selling truth, but there is a human need that is responding to the things that church communities are doing. And I think one of the other really big reasons that we need to cultivate in-person, on-the-ground communities is to provide a landing zone for those who are leaving their faith, because it's going to be a hell of a lot harder if they feel like they're leaving all the people who would miss them on Sunday, and they're not going to have communal music, and no one's going to have activities for their kids, and there's not going to be recovery programs for the things that they're going through. If there's none of that, boy, it's a hell of a lot easier to just sort of stay here and tuck those doubts away and not leave the church. We have to create an alternative community, more rooted in secular values, certainly rooted in reality. And that's an uphill climb with all of us independent thinkers, but I think it's a goal we should continue to pursue. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Whoops. I hit the wrong button. We have Marty calling in from New Jersey, pronouns are he, him. Marty wants to talk about tactics for debating the gospel. So, hey, Marty, thanks for waiting.
Hello, Mal. Hello, Seth. Good afternoon.
Hey.
It's my pleasure to talk to you guys. Let me just thank you for the work that you've done over the last number of decades, I guess. I think it's really important that you are out there and doing what you do to have people think critically about issues, particularly something like religion. So I'll start with that, and then I have a couple of just sort of questions for you. Not going to take too much time. One is, oftentimes people will want to debate about whether or not the Gospels were written by the actual apostles. And, Matt, you will usually pull out the Bible and read where scholars indicate that the Gospels were anonymous. We don't really know who wrote them. But I rarely hear you, if ever, argue that if you just simply read them, they don't contend. Like when I would ask someone is, well, please tell me where it says in Matthew that he was a tax collector. There's nowhere that's there. It's not there. There's nothing personal.
Wouldn't be there. We don't. Nobody. No Christian scholar claims that we know that Matthew was a tax collector because it says so in the book.
Oh,
that's not a claim.
Oh, that's true. That's obvious. But I'm talking about just assuming that Matthew was in fact a tax collector. If you were religious and you believe that, they still think that the Gospels were written by these people. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't. The work itself doesn't say that it was written by.
But the work itself doesn't. That's a terrible fucking argument because you're dismissing their belief because the work doesn't say it when they're not claiming that the work is how they know that. It's a terrible argument. You're objecting to something that they're not saying.
Yeah, I understand I understand your point, and you're right. But it's the kind of thing you would expect.
You understand my point, and I'm right.
I do.
But nothing.
Well,
if you understand my point and I'm right, there's no but.
Okay. Well, then let me just ask you this in response. If you read a book by about Winston Churchill, and it continually referred to him being in the Boer War, and referred to him in the first person, couldn't it have been? Yeah,
Marty. What fucking point do you have? Because for some reason, you and I have managed to get off on the absolute worst foot because you are calling me to tell me how you think I should argue with a fictional caller if they make some specific point. I didn't ask for that. I don't want it. I don't need it.
Okay, I got you. Well, let me just say, I do think you have one of the sharpest minds, and I was curious to see how I would do with presenting that argument, and you beat the shit out of me. So I take my hat off to you.
I hope that's your kink. Thanks, Marty.
Was his point that we could tackle the Gospels about cultural assumptions by Christians over things the Bible didn't actually say? Because I was raised to to be taught Matthew was the tax collector, and I never looked it up. So was his point that, well, one thing we could do to perhaps disprove the veracity of Scripture is to say, show me in the Bible where there's a tax collector, and maybe that plants the seed. So, they realized that, hey, wait, I believe something on assumption instead of looking it up. I mean, was he asking if there's utility in that?
All right.
I mean, I don't know. I was putting the pieces together as best I could on my end.
He had picked up on a particular line of reasoning that I don't think is particularly popular or relevant, and decided that he had a better response to it than what he normally hears from me.
Okay. All right. Well, I wasn't tracking, so I was putting the pieces together, and I thought, is he saying that it's almost like whenever we hear the nativity story, I always believed there were 3 wise men. Yeah, 3 wise men visited Jesus in the manger, but of course, nowhere in Scripture does it mention 3. So, if an atheist or a counter apologist had said, "Well, show me 3 in the Bible," and I wasn't able to show you, would that have been like a moment where my cage got rattled? And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. I had assumed something, but I'd never actually taken the time to read it in Scripture. I wonder what else in Scripture might not be adding up or might not be there that I've always just assumed. And I didn't know if maybe that was something he thought was a strategy.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if you asked that, he would say yes, even though I don't think that was the intent, because at that point, he's desperately trying to save something that's not relevant. Because the objection was, oh, I keep hearing you guys say this, but not that. And I'm like, I don't hear us talking about, having any sort of discussion about whether or not the Bible was written by Matthew or how they know. And if you point out that they're just wrong about the Bible, you don't know who wrote the Gospel of Matthew, and you don't know that that person was a tax collector. You don't even know that Matthew was outside of this. So you can go through anyway.
Oh,
sorry, I have I don't have anything further on that, but we have a call. We have a theist calling in, Watcher 215, pronouns are he, him, wants to defend his belief in God. So which God do you believe in, Watcher, and what is the reason for believing in that God?
The God who is the maker of heaven and earth, the one who sent Christ, and the God who Christ testified about, the true and living God, the creator of all things.
I feel like I'm listening to a Yahweh nickname wiki page. All right, so you believe in the Christian God, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Why?
And what was the point beyond that?
What was the point beyond that?
Yeah, why are you calling?
Is that what you? Oh, I was calling because I hadn't talked to Matt, and I just really discovered. I thought it wasn't as long as it has been, but it's been like 5 years since he hung up on me about me quoting a verse that he said that I was wrong about. I know.
Wow,
I've been
living rent free. I've been living rent free in your head for 5 years. Okay, so can you answer my question, which is, what reason do you have for why we should believe in the God you believe in?
The reason is because God is commanding us to love Him and to love one another.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just for clarity. I'm asking for what reason can you present that Seth and I should believe in the God you believe in? And you just said because God demands it. I'm not aware of any God existing. or demanding anything, let alone demanding that we should believe. So, what's the reason that we should believe that God is demanding us to believe?
The reason is because he's demanding that you love him and love each other.
You, man, we're still on the wiki page. It's amazing.
It's also amazing because it says you said you haven't talked to me in like 5 years, but the last call was October 22nd, 2024. But that one may not have been to me. So I'd have to go through all the old calls. But the question I asked is, what reason can you present for Seth and I to believe that God is demanding us to believe?
It's hard for me. You're asking. You think you're asking me a direct question, but it sounds really weird the way you're asking that question. I'm not really understanding.
Okay.
The reason
what
it
you're
sounds
asking.
like a direct question is
215.
because it's a direct question.
You've claimed that God is demanding us to believe in him. And my question is, what reason do you have that I should believe that God is demanding that I believe in him?
Because Jesus said the greatest commandment, he told you what the greatest commandment was, which was to
Jesus has
love
never
God.
told me anything. Jesus has never told me anything. And even if he had, that would not prove that God is demanding that I believe in him.
Well, really, God is demanding that you repent. That's what he's demanding, that you change your mind
So
about.
you in the span of less than 5 minutes have now changed what it is that God is demanding. And yet I'm still asking you for evidence that God has demanded anything.
The evidence is in the Bible.
No, it's not. The Bible is a book with claims. Those claims may or may not be true, but the evidence for whether or not those claims are true is not in the Bible. So when you say the Bible includes God's demand, how do you demonstrate that the Bible actually includes a demand from God and not just includes what someone claims is a demand from God?
The Bible is the demonstration that you're asking.
I'm sorry, but that's just not true. So you don't get to say the Bible is true because the Bible is true. You have to give evidence for that.
I don't get to say. Are we in America?
That's correct. That's
What is
correct.
this? What is this?
That's
get,
correct.
What is this
That's
get
correct.
to say?
That's correct. That's correct, you dishonest fuck. I am the one that determines what you can and cannot say. I am God on high. How dare I do that? Can we be honest?
No,
Or are
you're
you
deaf.
gonna you're gonna
Is
shut
what
your
you
fucking mouth? I'm gonna mute you. So I keep asking the simplest, most basic, kindergarten level questions of, can you defend your belief? And you want to know why it's been 5 years, according to you, since the last time we had a conversation. I'm asking you for the very, very basics of what evidence can you present that this has happened? And you sound like you just did a bong rip and have never thought about any of this shit in your entire life. If there is a Jesus and he sent you as his representative, he's an idiot. And if there's a Jesus and you came as his representative and he didn't stop you, he's an idiot. Not you, Jesus. Now, if in fact there isn't a Jesus and you came in with this shit, then the blame's on you. But when we're asking you for evidence of your claim and you just say that God has demanded when there's no evidence that any God exists, no evidence that any God has demanded anything, let alone that God has demanded God. So, or that we believe or that we repent. So for the last time, what evidence do you have that the Bible is true?
reality is the evidence that the Bible
Goodbye,
is true.
Watcher. Goodbye, Watcher 215, you coward. You
I'm
dishonest
not a
coward.
coward.
You are coward. You're not here under your real name, even though I've got your real phone number. You're
My
not here
name
under
is
your real
Jeff.
name. And
My
you're not,
name
I
is
don't care
Jeff,
what your
but
name is. It
but
doesn't
my
matter what your name is. My point is that you are calling in anonymously to defend a belief
no, I'm
that you
not.
then
I'm not anonymous. I'm not anonymous.
you are anonymous. You gave a pseudonym, but you did that to defend a belief that you're
That's my
refusing to
internet.
defend.
That's my internet name. Watch your
I'm sorry. Here, let me mute your dumbass since you don't know how to let me finish a sentence. You called in to defend something that you then do not believe. If someone tried to defend Islam to you the way you're trying to defend Christianity to us, what would your response be?
How would they be defending Islam? Would be how I would
God
respond. I have to know
exists
how.
because the Quran says so.
Okay. I would engage that person further.
Engage it then.
I wouldn't
Stop
cut.
telling
I
me what
wouldn't
you
cut
would
them
do
off.
and put up or shut up. Put up or shut up, Jeff. God exists because the Quran
Okay.
says so. What's your response?
Okay. What does the Quran say about God?
I don't need to tell you what the Quran says about God. I just need to tell you that the Quran says there is a God.
Okay. I believe there is a God, a creator.
Cool. Then you're now in agreement with the
We'd be in
Quran.
it. We
Why
would.
aren't you a Muslim?
I follow Christ. I don't follow Muhammad.
That's no reason. That's not a reason to not be a Muslim, because Christ is accepted. Your Christ is accepted as a prophet, but not the final prophet, because Muhammad, peace be upon him, came and gave us an update.
And doesn't Islam mean submission unto God?
Yes. Why are you afraid to submit to God?
No, I would be in agreement with that. So me and that
So
brother would
you're a Muslim.
have agreement.
Congratulations. Congratulations there, Christian. You are now a Muslim. Worst offender of Christianity ever.
Why is that, Matt?
You don't see why calling into an atheist show, having absolutely no defense and no argument for your position, and then in a mock engagement with a Muslim. Would you shut up? You're never, ever, 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 ever going to get to speak again on any show that I'm on. But you called in to defend Christianity to atheists and failed to make any sort of case at all. And when they're demonstrating how foolish you are and what a ridiculously bad representative and defender of Christianity you are, they set up a mock engagement with a fake Muslim, and you essentially throw him off the farm and convert to Islam. You're either not serious or not sufficiently versed in these topics for anybody to engage with you at all. Seth, did you have any other questions for Jeff?
I did not.
Goodbye, Jeff. See you in 5 years. Well, that's a frustrating way to kind of end here. We have run the gamut of callers. Is there something where, like, maybe I'm weird, but at no point in time from the age of 5 onward, after I walked down the aisle and accepted Jesus into my heart, at no point in my journey as a Christian would I have had difficulty saying what reason I had for believing in God. I mean,
I probably fell into the Bible is true and I take it on faith. I wouldn't have seen that, I would have been in defense mode probably. I would have played the personal relationship card probably. He lives in my heart. But But would I have quoted the Bible to prove the Bible? you know, Jesus did this because the Bible said Jesus did this. I don't think I would have phrased it quite that way. I mean, I was pretty good at mental acrobatics, but you're right. The Muslim could certainly do it. Anybody with any specific holy text could quote from that text to prove the text, and he would be treating that person with a different standard. John Loftus has that book about this called The Outsider Test for Faith, right?
Yeah.
Evidence for your religion, and I take it on faith for mine, or it's true because it is. It's like that circle. Have you seen the graphic? The Bible is true because it's the Word of God. How do you know it's the Word of God? Because God says so. How do you know that? Because the Bible is true, and you can just go round and round and round, over and over.
Yeah.
So,
And I get that there's going to be circularity there. That what you can do is you can take that the Bible is true because the Bible says so. And then you add in the Bible is true because this, because this, because this, because this, because this, and you can add as many steps you want. And it seems that the more steps you put around the edge of that circle before you get back to the Bible is true, the more you think that you can obfuscate the fact that you're just arguing from the Bible. And I think one of the things that's nice is when somebody shows that they don't even bother putting any of those extra steps in. They're not interested in the obfuscation. They're just, the Bible is true because the Bible is true because the Bible is true. They just know that they know that they know that they know. And it's in their head. They're not even saying the Bible is true because the Bible is true. There's no circularity. It is just a brute fact. The Bible is true. And once you have that kind of brute fact, it's why he was like, oh, you think you're asking me a direct question, but you're not. No, I really am. It's a really straightforward question. But there's a defense mechanism with some versions of Christianity and other religions that make it so that as soon as you hear the most obvious defense question, it just short circuits, because in your head, you're not using the Bible to justify the Bible. You just have it in your head. The Bible is true. This is a brute fact. This is the justification for itself. And once you get to the point where that does not trigger alarm bells as a fallacious line of reasoning, I guess you just get to the point where you can't even see how ridiculous. I mean, you had a talk about putting on God glasses, and another one, and book even, where the Christianity made me talk like an idiot. There are things about recognizing fallacies where I would have thought that if you simplify things, it would become more clear. But I think I was maybe wrong about some things, because when you simplify circularity as a fallacy down, you basically just make it go away in their head. And so there's no problem at all. I don't know if there's a solution to that.
I can see that.
On that note, you're watching the Line Network, and there's a bunch of stuff going on and coming up, including Sunday show after dark tonight, starting at 7 p.m. That's in a little less than 3 hours. Skeptalk on Monday is going to be John Gleason, and Tuesday's Chewed Gum is Alyssa and Eve, and Wednesday I will be back with Ian Harris for an episode of The Hang Up. Seth Andrews, where should they go to find you other than right here in this lovely...
just you can go to either of my websites, thethinkingatheist.com. The Thinking Atheist is not a person, it is an idea. And then my personal website is sethandrews.com. So thanks.
That'll do it for today's Sunday show. Do not forget about Free Flow in Florida and the American Atheist Convention, all coming up over the next couple months. There's a list of producers there. We've got splash screens for those things. You can go to patreon.com/calltheline and linemerch.com to find other ways to support us here on the network. I evidently developed a sore throat just over the course of one show. I'm weak. I've been doing this a long time. I'm weak. See you later, y'all.